Welcome to Life of Hair. My name's James Atkinson. Thank you for choosing to join into this episode. Now, in this episode, we've got the lovely Carol back. Now, you've probably seen Carol from a previous episode, or maybe not. I can't remember whether I've posted that episode yet or not. But anyway, so Carol is back with us. Now, last time we saw Carol, we were doing a bit of a colour correction. She had a few things going on. That's subsequently grown out, and she just needs a wee refresh. So today we're going to talk about what we're going to do to Carol. So Carol, what's your hair been like? Tell us all about it.
It's been amazing. I really liked it.
I didn't pay to that.
No,
I promise you.
you didn't. But maybe just a little bit brighter on top,
brighter,
just
yeah.
for the summer.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, I'd already preempted.
Yes.
I preempted that idea. Okay, cool. So a little bit brighter, a little bit more blonde, because last time obviously we made it more subtle. So last time what we did, we put some highlights in, and then in between the highlights we put a little bit of a root stretch on, and just to diffuse what was quite a blocky, strong line that had appeared in the hair previously. General condition of the hair is good. It's a little bit dry, but it's naturally a little bit dry, so we're not going to kind of get too concerned about that. There are a few split ends going through it, and we're going to deal with those with a little light trim later. So what I'm going to do with Carol's hair, to get more lightness in there, I'm going to do a freehand highlighting technique. Okay, so what we're going to do is our pre-section. So we're going to go through the middle, through the centre, down to the back of the ear here, and then we'll take that section. We don't have to be too fancy, we'll just get a clip in it, put it out of the way. And we'll repeat that exact same thing here on this right hand side, like so. Blend out any kind of heavy lines that we're going to create by using a technique like this. We're also using horizontal sections, and horizontal sections are really, really good for creating maximum coverage in the shortest space of time. So for example's sake, if we use diagonals, they are creating more softness, but we're not getting as much coverage. And if we use verticals, where we're getting the least amount of coverage in that section, because obviously it's traveling straight down the head. So we've got big gaps in between. So if you want to cover a lot of hair in a short space of time, then this is the way to do it, because of that natural for the hair to fall straight down with gravity and get that coverage with that section. So that's something to bear in mind. But apart from that, this technique is incredibly simple, like incredibly simple, really efficient on the shop floor, gets the job done in absolutely no time whatsoever. And then you can go in and do your toning techniques, so you're not adding masses of time onto, you know, your normal service times by doing your root stretches, because you're going to get your highlights in faster. And some people call these balayage highlights. You might have heard of them called balayage highlights before, where people use, you know, boards to put in highlights with. So, I mean, you know, whatever you want to call them, I just call them highlights because I'm not massively keen on sort of naming things just because it's a trendy term, balayage. You know, they're spatula highlights, or, you know, whatever you want to call this contraption, board highlights, some people call them. But whichever shape, size, or whatever you see them in, they're all pretty much the same ideology. You want to do a reasonably chunky technique when you're doing something like this. You don't want to do a really fine technique, because it will get lost in the hair, especially if you're leaving reasonable gaps in between each of your sections. So we're going to take a horizontal section, again, about 1 centimetre above the ear. Now the only thing you need to bear in mind is that if you're weaving from the face, it's easier to make sure you pick up the hair that's closest to the face. But if you're weaving on the other side back towards the face, it can be easy to miss this hair. So that's the only kind of thing that you need to think about side to side. Other than that, it very much repeats itself. We make sure we pick up the first bit of hair on the outside, so that we've got a piece of hair that is close to the face. And if that's it really. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculously simple, but this technique, is the beauty of it is the simplicity. Only one thing, by the way, just before I do that, and the only thing I would say about these spatulas is that the backs get dirty, and if the back gets dirty, that can end up in places you didn't want it. So just make sure that you've got a towel to hand that you're just going to wipe off. This is like a disposable towel from Scrummy, which I use in the studio. Much more time efficient and money saving. Okay, so we're on to the parting section, which I mentioned previously. It's the only area that you kind of need to think about a little bit more closely. And it depends on kind of how much impact you want to create in this top section. What I will say is when you're working horizontally up the head towards the parting, if you don't finish on the parting, it can look a bit strange. So there's two things you can do. You can pack a few more in here to make sure that you get the coverage that you need to make the job look seamless, or you can just be really precise about putting it right in the parting. So it's one of those things. I always just put a few more in and I make them a little bit finer than the rest of the sections that I've done throughout the head. But apart from that, there's nothing else to it. It is, you know, it's not rocket science. It's fairly simple. You've just got to make sure that you work through these sections a little bit finer and a little bit closer together than you've done on the previous sections. And when I say a little bit closer together, probably just half the size of your section. So we've done like 1 centimeter sections throughout, and on this particular section, 5 millimeter sections. And apart from that, piece of cake. Last one. And when you're in this particular situation, as you can see, we've got a section here and a section here, and we have got our whole section is 5 millimeters. Just slice off a tiny little bit and then make this weave extra fine so that you don't end up with kind of a clump of blonde, if you like, in that particular area. So you'll see this section's a lot finer, and that works a lot better when you're doing this type of scenario where you've got two pieces of colour that are very, very close together. So let's apply this last one. We'll allow this to process. We're all done. This was a very, very simple technique, as you saw from the video, but really effective. We've obviously toned down that root area to kind of give it that more modern highlight vibe, because I think really today everybody, even if they like being really blonde, appreciates having a little bit of softness at the root area. One, it grows out a bit softer, and two, I think it just looks more expensive. We've just given it a little tidy up. I didn't film the haircut, but it's just a nice little layer in there. We've put a nice soft beach wave into the hair just to amp it up a little bit. But you know, the existing blonde that was through the ends is from previous colours that have been done before, and I really love doing those spatula highlights. I think they are one of the sort of really great salon hacks when you don't want tons and tons of lift. You want to get maximum 5 levels and then go back in and tone or root shadow or whatever you're going to do. That is an absolute winner in my book.